I've written more than 35 novels. Most have been traditionally published. A few I've indie published. A few I've gotten the rights back to and indie published. Many have been national bestsellers. I've had a few #1 Amazon bestsellers. And for a long time, I was totally wrong about what actually makes readers turn the page. I don't think page-turning fiction is really about writing a faster story. I think it's about making the reader want something, making them wait for it, and then making that wait worthwhile, giving them the payoff, and then giving them something new to want before they have a chance to put the book down. That's how you get, okay, just one more chapter, and then, okay, one more. And before you know it, it's 1:00 in the morning, and you have a reader mad at you because they have to get up for work in 5 hours, and they're tired because they stayed up reading your book. I have gotten those messages. I have gotten reviews that say that. I stayed up way too late finishing your book. I couldn't put it down. These are some of my favorite messages and reviews to get because that's the goal, right? I want people turning the page. I want my book so riveting that they can't put it down. I thought something big had to happen, like a murder or a discovery or some sort of threat or a big twist. Something at the end of a chapter would sort of make the reader think, oh my God, what happens next? Yes, those things can work. I've written a lot of mysteries. I've killed a lot of fictional people over the years. But a dead body doesn't automatically make somebody turn the page. And neither does ending every chapter with somebody gasping. So what does? I'm so glad you asked. It's all about this. The reader is waiting for something. It sounds almost ridiculously simple, right? But once I understood this, I started thinking about story really, really differently. Hi, I'm Melissa Bourbon. I am the author of more than 35 novels. I've been writing professionally for about 20 years. And this is the first video in a new series about some of the things I have learned from actually doing this over and over and over again. These are not writing rules. These are not tips. These are not me saying you have to do it this way. These are things I understand about story now that I didn't understand when I wrote my first book or my second book or even my third book. And this is probably one of the biggest. If your reader isn't waiting for something, you have a problem because waiting creates anticipation, and anticipation is what pulls us forward. When I was a newer writer, I thought that pacing was mostly about what was happening. If part of the book felt slow, something needed to happen. So, okay, I would have somebody show up, or I'd reveal a clue, or I'd kill somebody, or I'd start an argument, or I'd throw in another complication of some sort. As writers, we often feel that if a scene is flat, we need to add more activity. But activity isn't necessarily anticipation. You can have two characters running for their lives and still have a pretty boring scene. And you can have two characters sitting across from each other, just drinking tea and being absolutely unable to put the book down. Why? What's the difference? One of these scenes has the reader waiting for something. That's the difference. So if I had to boil down what I thought then versus what I know now, it would be this. If the story feels slow, make something happen. That's then. Now, if the story feels slow, ask what the reader is waiting for. These are very different questions. I think one of the most powerful phrases in storytelling is not yet. The reader wants something, but you're not going to give it to them, not yet. They want to know who committed the murder. Obviously, not yet. They want Elizabeth Bennet to finally understand Darcy. Not yet. They want to know maybe what is behind this locked door. Not yet. They want to know if the dragon eggs are going to hatch. Not yet. I'm dating myself here, but do you remember the show Moonlighting? If you do, it was all about the anticipation between Maddie and David. Will they or won't they? Will they or won't they? Will they or won't they? And the longer it went on, the more we wanted it.
Well, you are so beautiful when you get fiscal.
Get your hand off my behind.
Is that your behind? Is that my hand? That's what I like about this place. You learn something new every day.
We want two people who've been circling each other for 300 pages to finally kiss, right? but we can't give it to them, not yet. That is anticipation. And this is important. I'm not talking about you as the author willfully withholding information. I don't mean I knew what I had to tell her, this terrible secret I'd kept for 20 years. End of chapter. Dun, dun, dun. No, no, no. That's not what I'm talking about. Don't do that to the reader. That is not anticipation. That is the author standing between me, the reader, and the story. It's like a bait. What we're trying to do is create something the reader genuinely wants, and then we want to make the journey toward getting there worth taking. The books we can't put down usually have more than one thing we're waiting for. So sure, maybe I'm waiting to discover who killed somebody else, but I'm also waiting for maybe the protagonist's sister to discover she's been lying to her. Or maybe I'm wondering if that relationship with the detective is actually going anywhere. Or maybe I'm waiting for a character to finally stand up to her mother. Now I've got a lot of reasons to keep reading. Here's what writing series taught me about this and what my readers taught me. I've written multiple mystery series. And when you are writing a series, you figure out pretty quickly that the murder can't be the only reason people come back or come to your book. Every book has a different murder. Nobody finishes book 1 and buys book 2 because they're still wondering who killed the victim in book 1. They already know that's been resolved, right? It's a complete arc. That story is over. So why do they come back? They come back because they're waiting for things in the larger story that are not over yet. And this is something my readers did teach me. Over the years, I've gotten a lot of emails and direct messages, DMs, and asking things like, when is Lola coming back? When's the next Lola book? Are Lola and Jack ever going to get together? When's Riley coming back? What's going to happen with Pippin's brother? Is Pippin's dad really dead? Is the family really cursed? Okay, I would read some of these messages and think, oh my God, you're waiting for that. That was incredibly useful information. It was like this aha moment because what I thought was pulling readers through the story and what they were actually waiting for were not always the same thing. Sometimes it was something really small, like why is Sadie so surly all the time? That question is answered later on, not right away, but it is a question that readers have and they're anticipating the answer for, and the payoff was good with that one. That's not the murder. It's not the big external plot. It's an emotional component. And apparently, people really wanted to know the answer to that question. And I gave it to them eventually. That's when I started understanding that the thing with the biggest plot stakes isn't necessarily the thing that has the biggest reader investment. And that is a distinction I really wish I had understood much earlier. There are a few places I look now when a story starts losing momentum. One obvious place is information. Who did it? What happened that night? What's in the letter? Why won't she talk about her sister? We're curious. But information is only one possibility. It's only one way to build anticipation. Sometimes we are waiting for a consequence. And I love this because we already know what happened. Let's say a character lied. We all know she lied. That's not a secret. But we also know that her husband doesn't know she lied. So I'm not waiting to discover the lie itself because I already know that. I am waiting for him to find out. And how is he going to find out? And that is a completely different kind of anticipation. You can carry that kind of anticipation for a pretty long time because every scene between these two characters has this new layer that we know about. The anticipation is built in because we have the consequence, and that's what we're waiting for. Sometimes we're waiting for a decision. Sometimes we're waiting for a character to finally make a choice. Is she going to leave? Is he finally going to tell her the truth? It doesn't have to be life or death. It's emotional usually. What matters is that we understand this choice is coming. We care about this choice. And every time circumstances make the decision harder, then the anticipation grows. And now we're not simply watching things sort of happen to this character. We're waiting to see what they're going to do when they finally have to choose, when they finally have to make that decision. I do a version of this in House of Spells and Secrets with my character Rowan. Rowan doesn't understand her own magic. Her sisters have these much sort of clearer magical gifts, but Rowan's is pretty obscure. She doesn't really understand it, and as far as she is concerned, it does not serve any purpose, like at all. So there's a question kind of hovering there or sitting there. Is she ever going to need this magic? And readers have to wait for that answer. When she finally does use it, it's not something cool and magical that I just sort of threw in. Her magic actually is central to what happens and how everything resolves. So the answer matters, and that is the payoff. Curiosity versus anticipation. This is a distinction that I think is really, really important. Curiosity and anticipation are not quite the same thing. Curiosity is kind of like what's behind door number one. Anticipation is, oh my God, what is going to happen when she opens that door? One makes me wonder, the other makes me need to see it happen. And that is where things can get really, really interesting, because sometimes the reader already knows what's coming and they're just waiting for, these two things to collide. Character A knows something character B doesn't. We know both of these things as readers, and we know that they're heading towards each other in this, this collision that's going to happen. And we know that eventually these two things are going to meet. And we're not asking like what happens next. We are thinking, oh my God, what is going to happen when she finds out? That is anticipation. And in a lot of cases, maybe in most cases, I think that's even stronger than simple curiosity. Here's something I want you to try. Pick 3 consecutive chapters in your manuscript, whatever you're working on right now, and don't use your opening chapters. I would suggest that you go somewhere in the middle, because that's where stories, I think, tend to expose themselves more. At the end of this first chapter that you've chosen, write down, what is my reader waiting for right now? Not what is my protagonist's goal. Yes, that is important. Goal, motivation, conflict, disaster, all of those things matter, but those are different questions. For this particular exercise, I want you to ask, what does my reader want to see happen? What does my reader want to learn? Or what does my reader finally see coming to a head? And then write down your answer. Now go to the next chapter and ask it again, and then the next and ask it again. If you can't answer that question, that's telling you something pretty big. You need to pay attention to that. But here's another scenario. What if you write down the exact same answer 3 times? What if the reader's waiting for the same thing for 3 chapters? That's a problem too, because if you've been asking your reader to wait for the same thing chapter after chapter after chapter, and you haven't moved them any closer to it, you're not building anticipation anymore. You're stalling. And something needs to change. The reader has to get closer to the answer. The situation has to become more complicated in some way. Or maybe it's time to give them the payoff and, give them something new to want. I like to think of anticipation like a rubber band. You stretch it and you stretch it and you stretch it, and then the tension builds and builds and builds. And eventually you have to let it snap. It's going to snap. You give us the answer. You let them kiss. You expose the lie. You open the door. You make the decision. And then you give us something new to wait for. You get a new rubber band. That is the part that I think a lot of writers sometimes miss, because we worry that if we answer the question, we're going to kill the tension and the momentum. But you won't. Not if the answer creates the next thing the reader wants. This is probably one of the biggest differences between how I looked at a manuscript when I wrote my first few books versus how I look at one now. I used to ask, what happens next? I still ask that. Of course I do. We all do, right? But now I'm also asking, what is the reader waiting for next? And these are not always the same thing. When they start working together, when they weave together, that's when a story begins to pull the reader through it. You don't have to keep shoving the reader forward with more action. They're already leaning forward because they want something. We've made them want something. That's a huge shift. There's one more piece to this. If you're going to make readers wait, you have to have a payoff. You've made them a promise. The longer they wait, the more satisfying that payoff needs to be. That is true of The Murderer. That is true for the romance. That is true of the family secret, the character arc, whatever it is. This is something I learned the hard way. I had readers say in reviews that an ending wrapped up too quickly. I had editors tell me that same thing, like the ending was just too short, too quick. Early on, I didn't really understand what that meant. The mystery was solved. The story was finished. What else did people want? But now I get it. I made them wait for something. Now I need to let them enjoy that payoff. That was what was wrong. If I make you wait for 300 pages for something and then I resolve it in like 3 paragraphs, that is not going to feel very satisfying for the reader. It doesn't mean the answer has to be shocking or there doesn't have to be a giant twist. It just has to feel worthy of the anticipation that I've built around it. That payoff needs to feel complete and earned. I did not really understand that at the beginning, but 35 books later, I definitely do. I've learned some things the hard way. We all do, but that's also how we learn. And I'm still learning today. 35 books doesn't mean I know everything. Here's what I hope you take from this video. The next time you're working on your manuscript and you hit that point where you're thinking, God, this feels so slow, and you don't really know what to do, and your instinct is maybe to add something. I don't want you to add something or blow something up or introduce another subplot or kill somebody. Well, depending on your genre, you may eventually need to kill somebody. But before you do that, ask, what is my reader waiting for? Then ask, am I moving them closer to it? And then, is the waiting itself interesting? And then finally, once I give it to them, what are they going to start waiting for next? This is how you create forward momentum, and that's how you keep readers turning the pages. This is the first video in a new series about what I've learned from writing more than 35 novels, especially things I wish I'd understood a whole lot earlier, and I'm passing those things on to you. Now, I want to know something about your novel. If you're working on something right now, tell me in the comments. What is your reader waiting for? Not your protagonist, but your reader. Because those answers may be very different. Leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.